McGowan was recovering from a past marred by tragedy. Her last two boyfriends had both lost their lives in separate car crashes, which had left poor Beverly feeling broken and alone. She tried dating after that, but always cut those relationships off whenever they became serious, terrified of becoming close to someone again, only to lose them. The once social and outgoing Beverly had become reclusive and shy, and was desperately searching for a way to reconnect with her old self, a way to recover her identity, and a change of scene and bases was just what the doctor ordered. In an attempt at a fresh start, Beverly bought a modest condo in Pompano Beach, Florida, and moved in with her 2 cats. To help cover the mortgage costs in 1990, she decided it was time to look for a roommate to live with her. And this would also have the added benefit of helping her feel more secure at a time when she needed to. In early July of that year, she had told her brother, Steve, about a disturbing message that had been left on her answering machine. One in which a gruff, male voice stated, "I know where you live, and I can't wait for us to be together." Unsettled by the message, Beverly had taken her answering machine into work and played it to her colleagues. They all agreed it was odd, and so Beverly thought a flatmate may help put her mind at ease. In mid-July, about a week after that message had been left, Beverly placed an ad for her spare room in the Sun-Sentinel newspaper. It wasn't long before someone responded. A 40-something-year-old British woman who introduced herself simply as Alice. This prospective roommate explained that she worked for the multinational technology company, IBM, and had just been transferred from London to their Fort Lauderdale office. On the surface, Alice appeared to be a successful career woman. She drove an expensive car and dressed in posh designer clothes. She certainly came off as the type who would have her share of the rent on time. To sweeten the deal even further, Alice was extremely charismatic, beautiful, magnetic, as Beverly described her to friends. Perhaps that's why she felt so comfortable going along with what happened next. After touring the apartment, Alice said that she'd love to move in as soon as possible. The pair went to grab a drink in town to iron out the details. There, they bonded over their mutual interests and their past histories. It was then that Alice began telling Beverly about her interest in numerology, a pseudoscience whose practitioners believe in a mystical or even divine relationship between numbers and coinciding events. Numerologists believe in life path numbers, destiny numbers, and that specific numbers hold certain powers and can influence one's life. Alice suggested that she could do a reading for Beverly. By using numbers from her personal life, she could reveal her future. Those personal numbers had to come from very specific places though, and she was going to need her passport and social security numbers, as well as her birth certificate. Perhaps it was because Alice seemed like such an honest and trustworthy person. Perhaps it was because she had finally made a meaningful connection with someone after such a long, lonely period. Perhaps it's because she really bought into the whole numerology spiel. But for whatever reason, Beverly agreed to hand Alice all of that information. Using her personal digits, Alice conjured up Beverly's fortune. According to the numbers, Beverly would meet her future husband at the age of 40 and would accumulate great wealth. But the numbers also provided a warning that a man and a woman who were close to her would soon deceive and hurt her. That last part proved to be somewhat true. On the evening of July 17th, 1990, just a few short days after Alice moved in, Beverly vanished. 2 days later, on July 19th, several of her friends and relatives received cryptic farewell letters from Beverly, in which she claimed she was selling her condo and starting a new life elsewhere. For example, the note she sent to her brother read, "I just want to say goodbye to you and the kids, and to let you know that what I'm doing is the right thing. This is what I need at this point in my life, so don't worry. When I come back, I'll be a much better and happier person." These letters, which were all postmarked Wednesday, July 18th, had been sent from Miami. They didn't state where Beverly was going, or when she'd be back. Obviously, her loved ones were extremely suspicious. This type of behavior was completely out of character for Beverly.
Something bothered me because that's not the type of person that Bev was. She was not the kind of person, after spending all her money to try to get that condo and try to land a job at the bank, which she seemed to be happy with. It was not her nature to just give up on everything and just walk away from it.
Although the letters were undoubtedly written in her handwriting, they feared that she may have been forced to write them under duress. That worry only intensified when they learned about a telegram that Beverly had sent to her mortgage company, which authorized them to foreclose on her home and destroy or sell all of her belongings. Worried about her well-being, Beverly's 2 elder siblings, Steve and Jane, paid a visit to Bev's home on South Flagler Avenue the same day they received the letters. Her red Volkswagen Fox wasn't parked outside, and her telephone had been disconnected. After gaining access to the condo, the pair took a look around. Inside, there was nothing that gave the impression that Beverly had packed up and left for good. Dirty dishes filled the sink. Her nightgown was resting unfolded on her unmade bed. All of her clothes were still inside the closet. Nothing appeared to be missing. That is, except for her 2 cats, and her birth certificate, passport, credit cards, and address book. In other words, the 2 items which she had given to her new roommate, Alice, access to her bank accounts, and a list of all of her loved ones' addresses, which somebody else could have used to mail the letters. Steve and Jane immediately went to Beverly's workplace, only to be told that she had called in sick the day prior and stated that she wouldn't be coming in for a while. The employee who took the call said that the voice sounded like Beverly's. It was at that point that Steve and Jane reported their sister missing. Later that same day, at approximately 7 p.m, 31-year-old Floridian Jesse Moorhead went out to catch some live bait for bass fishing. He made his way down to a remote irrigation canal in St. Lucie County, approximately 100 miles from Pompano Beach. Mr. Moorhead clambered along the embankment, keeping a watchful eye out for any alligators, which were known to inhabit the canal. While keeping his eyes peeled, he noticed what looked like a bag full of rags resting in the mud. But as he got closer and inspected the object more thoroughly, it dawned on him what he was actually looking at. The mutilated remains of a human body. It was Beverly McGowan. Her throat had been slit, and in order to delay identification, her killer had hacked off her hands using a machete and had crudely removed her head at the mouth, leaving only a small section of her lower jaw behind. They had also sliced off a tattoo from her abdomen, one of Thumper, the rabbit from Bambi. And yet, their attempt to anonymize the remains failed, since they missed a second tattoo which Beverly had on her ankle, one of a yellow rose. Beverly would be formally identified on July 21st. Whoever had taken her life had done so in a different location, likely on the 18th, the same day the letters had been sent. Following the discovery of the body, Beverly's home was more thoroughly analysed. There was no sign of a struggle having taken place inside, nor were there any suspicious fingerprints, fibres or hairs. Investigators quickly realised that they were hunting for a professional. It soon came to light that on the same day her body was found, somebody had used Beverly's credit card to make luxury purchases in Miami's Aventura Mall. The shopkeepers who had rung through the items described the woman using the card as, quote, an attractive blonde woman with an English accent. Bank statements also revealed that someone had withdrawn $795 from Beverly's account. For obvious reasons, this Alice, as she had been calling herself, was quickly determined to be the prime suspect in Beverly's slaying. Though without a surname to work with, tracking her down was going to prove difficult.
Alice was supposed to be on loan to the United States from England, working for IBM in South Florida. Upon checking with the IBM Corporation, we learned that they had nobody on loan to South Florida from England,
and at the office that Alice said she worked for in Fort Lauderdale, that they didn't even have an office in Fort Lauderdale.
Alice's backstory and entire identity had been fabrications. Beverly's new roommate hadn't decided to end her life and steal her money on a whim. This woman had planned it all out from the start. A plan which she had formulated after coming upon Beverly's ad by pure chance. Had Beverly advertised her spare room on any other day or in any other paper, then Alice's chosen victim would have likely been somebody else entirely. Given that this had all been premeditated and pulled off with such great efficiency, this likely wasn't Alice's first rodeo, and it soon dawned on the investigators that she may not have been working alone. On July 20th, one day after Beverly's remains had been found, an unidentified man went in to the Thunderbirds travel agency in Miami and used Beverly's credit card to reserve an Avis rental car. This individual, who introduced himself only as Sam, was dressed up as a woman and was wearing a black Cleopatra-style wig along with oval-shaped glasses. At the time of her slaying, Beverly McGowan herself had dark, shoulder-length hair and did indeed wear eyeglasses. This Sam spoke with an English accent and said that he'd be departing from the States on July 22nd on British Airways Flight 292. His destination? Heathrow Airport, London. He'd need the vehicle ready at Heathrow as soon as he landed. He booked the car under Beverly's name using her card details. When Sam finally did arrive at Heathrow on July 23rd, he used Beverly's name and passport to pick up the car. By that point, the card had been cancelled by Beverly's family, but Sam was able to talk his way out of the situation, paid using cash, and drove off, never to be seen again. When the failed use of Beverly's card in London was flagged by her bank, investigators in the US called their counterparts in the UK and asked them to help them find Sam. British officers staked out Heathrow Airport on the day Sam was scheduled to return the rental car. But the thing is, he never showed up. The car was found abandoned and wiped down just a few miles from the airport on that same day. Fearing that Sam may be trying to board a flight back to the US under a different name, dozens of UK detectives boarded every flight for the States and examined all of the passengers on each flight, but nobody matching Sam's description was identified. The US detectives examined the passenger list for BA Flight 292, their only remaining lead, but there was no mention of an Alice or a Sam among the 248 passengers. Beverly's name also didn't appear on the list, meaning that neither of them had used her passport to board the plane, and had booked their ticket, or tickets, under a different name. 6 days after Beverly's body had been discovered, on July 25th, her red Volkswagen Fox was finally located, parked at a motel near Miami International Airport. It had been there for 5 days. Though fingerprint powder didn't provide any new evidence, 4 hairs from a synthetic black wig were found on the driver's seat headrest. The investigators began going through the names of each passenger on board Flight 292, though due to jurisdictional issues, this process would end up taking years. Finally, in 1996, after 6 long years of digging, Detective Rena Crowningshield came to a startling realization. One of the passengers, a UK citizen named Sylvia Ann Hodgkinson, who had been sat in seat 18C, had been dead at the time the flight departed. How could it be that a dead woman boarded a plane? Well, the answer would soon reveal itself. In 1991, a woman with an English accent had been arrested in North Miami for a driving offence. She identified herself as Charlotte Ray Cohen and provided the officers with an ID, but was also found to be holding an ID card under the name Sylvia Ann Hodgkinson and another under Elaine Parent. During her arrest, 2 small dogs were sat inside the car with her. This Charlotte Cohen was held in a county jail, but was bailed the following morning. She was summoned to appear in court thereafter, and when it came time for her case to be presented before the judge, a confused Charlotte Cohen stood up and asked why she had been summoned to court when she hadn't committed any offence. The officers who had arrested her, who were in attendance, looked upon Charlotte and were stunned. The woman who had been summoned before the judge was Charlotte Cohen, but wasn't the same woman that they had picked up for the driving offence. Not only was she physically completely different, but she spoke with an American accent. That's when the reality of the situation dawned on Charlotte Cohen. Well, the real Charlotte Cohen. And she explained everything. Almost a decade earlier, Charlotte was sitting in a bar in Orlando, Florida, when an elegantly dressed woman with piercing blue eyes and an English accent approached her. Charlotte was immediately enchanted. This woman, who introduced herself as Anne Tremont, sat and chatted with her for a while. During conversation, she brought up an interest of hers: numerology. Anne convinced Charlotte to divulge her personal information so that she could read her future. She had the most sophisticated manner, Charlotte later stated, all with this cut-glass English accent. She was so persuasive. I'll never forget that woman. There was something amazing and glamorous about her. After talking for some time, a man with blonde hair entered the bar. Anne explained that he was her brother and that she had to leave now, but made sure to get Charlotte's phone number before she did. The pair became close friends, and eventually even began a romantic relationship. Months later, Anne mentioned that she and her brother had just come into a huge inheritance, but that she feared he was planning to take all of the money for himself. Thereafter, Anne suddenly stopped replying to Charlotte's calls and didn't contact her for a few weeks. Then, one night, at approximately 3 a.m, a distressed Anne appeared on Charlotte's doorstep wearing a fake mustache, a wig, and a man's shirt and tie. She explained that her brother had placed her in a mental facility so that he could claim the entire inheritance. She was now on the run from him, and begged Charlotte for help. All she had to do was hand over her birth certificate. That way, Anne could create a new identity for herself. At first, Charlotte refused, but seeing the tears and fear in Anne's eyes, she eventually capitulated. Anne promised to return Charlotte's birth certificate, and indeed, she did. That is, 3 weeks later, by mail. Charlotte never saw or heard from Anne again, but when she received a summons to appear in court for a crime she hadn't committed, she knew exactly who was responsible. It was Anne who had been arrested that night in 1991. But as would come to light, her real name wasn't Anne at all. Nor was it Sylvia Hodgkinson or Alice. Her real name was Elaine Antoinette Parent, an American con artist, otherwise known as the Chameleon Killer. Born and raised in the Bronx, Elaine settled in Florida at the age of 30. Her life on the run began in 1985 after a jewel heist that went wrong, after which she fled to London until the heat died down. There, she learned to speak with a flawless English accent, and in time, befriended a homeless woman who had slipped through the cracks. One Sylvia Ann Hodgkinson. The real Sylvia Ann Hodgkinson. Elaine didn't just take Sylvia's life, but her identity, too, and applied for a passport in her name. In the years that followed, Elaine assumed more than 20 identities that she had stolen from victims on both sides of the Atlantic, male and female. Victims that she had either defrauded or slain, though oftentimes both. In fact, Charlotte Cohen is the only known victim of Elaine's to have survived their encounter with her. After meeting, befriending, and ultimately killing her victims, Elaine would take their personal documents and information, assume their identities, and hide their remains, mutilating them to delay identification. It was the same fate that had befallen the real people behind all of her personas. When they finally were discovered and ID'd, she would find a new victim, and take their persona and life savings. Elaine had a taste for the finer things in life, you see. Michelin star restaurants, luxury hotels, the most expensive designer brands, and she used her victims' money to fund her lavish lifestyle. Elaine was a skilled actress with what many described as a magnetic personality. So, despite obviously lacking emotions herself, she found it easy to connect with people, to draw them in, gain their trust, and strike when they least expected it. Highly intelligent and flamboyant, Elaine was even known to taunt the authorities. In fact, the origin of her nickname was a hand-painted postcard of herself, which she had sent to the police, along with the message, "Best wishes, your Chameleon," typed on the back. By constantly changing her name, altering her appearance, and moving between the US and the UK, Alice, or Sylvia, or Elaine, had been able to outwit and outmaneuver law enforcement in both countries for nearly 2 decades. But she had made one fatal error. After being arrested back in 1991, Elaine had to sign some documents. When the investigators working Beverly McGowan's case learned of an Elaine parent carrying the ID of Flight 292 passenger Sylvia Hodgkinson, they re-examined the evidence in the case file, paying special attention to a notepad found in Beverly's home, the one that she had used to write the farewell letters to her family. As mentioned, those letters had been penned in Beverly's handwriting, but using an electrostatic detection device, otherwise known as ESTA, forensic experts were able to examine the notepad in more detail and reveal indentations that weren't visible to the human eye. The type that are made when someone writes on a separate piece of paper on top of the piece being examined. This testing revealed hidden messages that had been invisibly ingrained upon the pad. These messages were recreated using ESTA, and they revealed entire paragraphs that had been written in someone else's handwriting, saying things like, "You will feel the repercussions, I guarantee it. After your treatment and abandonment of me, I have no remorse in tearing down what in truth I created anyways. Give me back my life." The handwriting was compared with a sample of Elaine parents. They were a perfect match. That placed Elaine Parent inside Beverly McGowan's condo at the same time she had written her goodbye letters. Esther also revealed the address that Elaine's angry letters had been sent to, and investigators were able to interview the recipient. A businesswoman in London, known only as Witness X. She confirmed that Elaine was her ex-partner, and that she had received a vitriolic letter from her with that exact wording back in 1990, just after the pair had broken up. Witness X also explained that Elaine had stolen her 2 small dogs and held them for ransom. These are believed to be the same 2 dogs found in the car with Elaine when she posed as Charlotte Cohen in 1991. It was now confirmed that Elaine Parent was the Anne Tremont that Charlotte had met, was the Sylvia Hodgkinson on Flight 292, and was the Alice that had taken Beverly McGowan's life. Now the only question was, where was she? Beverly's case was first covered by the TV show Unsolved Mysteries in 1991, though the segment was later updated by host Robert Stack, who announced that Elaine Parent, now the world's most wanted woman, was a person of interest. As well as Unsolved Mysteries, an appeal for information about the Chameleon was also aired on America's Most Wanted. At last, the authorities caught up with Elaine on April 6, 2002, the same day that episode of AMW aired, all thanks to the help of a tipster who had been watching the show. This tip led them to an apartment in Panama City, Florida, where Elaine was living under an alias. Elaine answered the door in her silk nightgown and was asked by the 3 officers outside for some identification. She handed them a military ID with the name Darlene Thompson written on it. At first glance, it appeared convincing, but orders were orders, and they said they needed to ask her some questions downtown. Elaine agreed to go with them, but asked if she could first change into some proper clothes. They agreed to wait outside, and Elaine scurried off to her bedroom. As the officers waited, one of them re-examined her ID in closer detail. Given that he had a military background, he realized it was a fake. He knocked on the bedroom door, to which Elaine shouted, "I'm getting dressed." Suddenly, a shot rang out. The officers rushed into the bedroom and found Elaine unresponsive on the floor. She had shot herself in the heart with a .357 Magnum. Now backed into a corner, the Chameleon had evaded capture one last time in the only way she could. Not by changing her colours, but by ending her life. Elaine's room was filled to the brim with wigs, disguises, fake IDs, and books on how to convincingly apply stage makeup. She was buried unceremoniously at the age of 60, taking her bizarre lifestyle and countless secrets with her. It's chilling to think that people like Elaine Parent exist in our world. Strangers who we pass unknowingly in the street. Friends and partners who hide their true intentions. Elaine had claimed at least 8 lives and an untold number of identities during her time at large, and there are of course concerns that she's connected to more slayings that we simply don't know about. After all, investigators aren't even 100% sure that Elaine Parent was her real name, since they haven't been able to unearth her birth certificate. For all we know, the real Elaine Parent was just another of her many victims. Either one who was never reported missing, or a Jane Doe who was never identified. But at least the families of her confirmed victims, including the family of Beverly McGowan, can at least find some closure. But before we wrap up, I'm sure you're all asking, Lazy, what about the second suspect, Cleopatra Sam? Well, this is where I have to report that this case is only half solved, since to this very day, the true identity and whereabouts of Sam remain unknown. That being said, there are many who believe that Sam never existed at all, and that he was actually Elaine, masquerading in a black wig and masking her voice. It seems hard to believe that both the travel agent in America and the car rental service in London would both have mistaken Elaine for a man. But then again, the Chameleon was the master of disguise, and she had made use of male personas in the past. But I can't help but think back to when Charlotte Cohen met Elaine, or Anne as she knew her, and how she had a blonde male accomplice with her, playing the part of her brother. Also, that eerie message left on Beverly's answering machine 1 week before her untimely end, and the fact that the machine itself was missing from her condo. That surely can't be a coincidence. Well, we may never know who Sam really was, or even if he really was, but what we can say with certainty is that during her 17 years on the run, Elaine Parent certainly earned her sobriquet, the Chameleon. She often changed her colours. She blended in effortlessly. And, just like her reptilian namesake, she was undeniably cold-blooded.